Hello, hello. Ron Callis here with another episode of Automation Unplugged. We are here for show number 130. Today is Wednesday, July 22nd. It is just a little bit past 12:30. And I'm going to go ahead and check into Facebook and see if it seems that we are live. And we'll see if technology is cooperating. So just bear with me as I do that. Oh my goodness. And my mouse, wouldn't you know, right the moment I go live, my mouse decides to die. They like to keep these shows interesting. We'll see if there we go. I'm back. All right. So let me just confirm. I want to make sure we're live on the page. There we go. I do see that we are live. Oh, okie dokie. I do see that my software is acting a little weird. I normally see all of your feed here, and I don't see that today, but I do see over here that you guys are there. So I may not be able to be as responsive to you as I would like to be in putting your comments up on the screen. But I do have my team tuning in, and they will be sure to comment and respond to you if you guys post. And you never know, maybe our software will decide to catch up. So without further ado, I know you're here to hear from our guest, and that is Shaun Schuetz, VP of Sales for the Americas for AudioQuest. And super excited to have Shaun on the show. Let me go ahead and see if I can bring him on. Shaun, how are you, sir?
Hey, I'm doing really great, Ron. Good seeing you this morning.
Hey, man, likewise. Where are you coming to us from? Where is your domicile?
The COVID-19 domicile or bunker? No, it's
yes.
Southern California. So Ranch Santa Margarita, basically inside Orange County, and lovely Southern California today. So
awesome. Well, I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. And when I say busy schedule, I know you're taking care of the Americas. Is that North, Central, and South America? All of that's your domain for AudioQuest?
Yep, that's all the domain, and it's busy during this pandemic is an understatement, and it is been very busy, which is a good thing.
And so busy now. Are you traveling, or are you doing everything virtual from the bunker, or what are you doing?
Yeah, it's everything virtual. Traveling maybe downstairs to the living room, which I think conveniently now is renamed LMR. Maybe the garage, maybe the park.
All right. Now I know that there's an acronym. I'm supposed to know the name. What's LMR?
I think that's living room. There's some memes that have come out that have shown like an airport code for parts of the house. So like the bedroom, I think, is BRM. You're gonna.
Oh, look at that. Anyway. So I can't help but notice all the Star Wars stuff in the background. And I, of course, am going to ask you at least 100 questions. My son is 11, and he's the biggest Star Wars fan on the planet. And I told him I was going to be interviewing a Star Wars expert. And so at least most of my interview will be about Star Wars and then a few other questions, as long as that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine by me. I think some people during this have been probably watching a little bit of The Mandalorian and other things. So, we could... We'll take a relief from normal life and talk about Star Wars. That's fine.
I love, and I just I just was watching the Mandalorian behind the scenes stuff this weekend, and so I definitely want to go down that path with you. But before I do that, for those that are watching or listening, and they may not know you, and they may not, I know that might be very few and far between that don't know you and or know AudioQuest. But do you mind taking us through your background? Kind of what's your origin story? How did you land in this VP of sales role?
Yeah, origin story as we're talking about superheroes. And
exactly. I figured it was appropriate.
Which is funny because we just rewatched Spider-Verse again for Spider-Man, speaking of origin
Such
stories.
An excellent cartoon movie.
Oh, yes, it is. And that's probably another
Hey,
deeper
and a
dive.
killer soundtrack. And it won the Oscar, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. And number two, I believe is slated for next year right now. It's for animation. So yeah, so Into the Spider-Verse 2, I believe is 2021 or 2022.
Same creative team behind the first
Same
one.
same formatting, same creative team and everything. Which
Okay.
yeah, me and the boys are excited about that. So and like you, so I have two littler Star Wars fans. So two boys, 6 and 4. Oldest is named Sky. The youngest is named Solomon, or we call him Solo for short. I'll let the audience connect the dots on where their names came from. Uh,
Wow, that's awesome.
yeah, so Solo is either going to be a smuggler or he's going to be a very wise king someday. So I guess it's 50-50. But yeah, you asked about my origin story or kind of the background a bit, and it's very interesting to tie years to it now because probably been in the industry over 20 years now, which is still crazy to say that kind of number. But I started in this kind of an accident where went to school for mechanical engineering, was kind of bored doing engineering, dropped out, was doing some odd jobs at like say 19, and then I basically wanted to go play PlayStation. And I was like, oh, where should I go? I was like, I'll go to Best Buy, and I go there for a week. And then while I was looking for work, I'm like, yeah, maybe this is kind of a cool place to work. This is back in '99, and I was like, I applied for a job, and then next thing I know, 13 years later, basically worked for Best Buy on all forms of retail. I worked in, I think I counted 6 different states. As far north as Alaska, I worked up there for a year. And then probably almost 6 years of that, I worked for the Magnolia side of the business. So really got in depth to high performance audio, high end custom projects. I think the store I ran, we had 9 salespeople, 6 install crews, and we were doing projects from $5,000 to $250,000 projects that were absolutely fun. And then I, back in 2012, I had the opportunity with AudioQuest to I'll say, move away from retail or migrate away from retail and of all things, move to Asia. So 2012 took an opportunity with AudioQuest to basically move to Taipei, Taiwan, live there and actually work with all the distributors in about 17 countries in Asia, and spent 4 years traveling over Asia, working with integrators, retailers, distributors all through the entire Asia Pacific region, from kind of Australia, New Zealand, all the way over to India and everything in between. And then 4 years ago, my wife and I, and 2 boys, because both were born in Taiwan, had the luxury of coming back to the States. Definitely some things we miss, probably being in Asia. Although
I imagine the food had to be pretty spectacular.
Yeah, it's not bad. Now, food is pretty spectacular, and as my wife would probably joke that, and my wife originally is from Taiwan, grew up there, but she's been in the States 20 years now. So I'll let you do the math on it. She'd probably kill me if I was talking about her age right now, but
yeah,
she's constantly 27 anyways. But
permanently 20. My wife is permanently 27.
But she, missed the food, but my wife, when we moved back, she's like, "Oh man," she's like, "We have Trader Joe's again, so we can still go back there and get our daily fix of TJ, so to speak." So, but yeah, moved back 4 years ago. Was a regional for AudioQuest actually at the time in the Midwest, working with a lot of dealers and distributors from basically Nebraska all the way up through Minnesota, Wisconsin, etc. And then almost actually, it's going to be 3 years ago, October, took over as VP of Sales for the Americas. So,
what prompted the move back from Asia? Was that your decision? You just guys were ready to get back into the States, or was it some other business decision that prompted that?
Yeah, it was when I came to AudioQuest, it was kind of open ended. I joke sometimes. Grew up in Wisconsin, born and bred, north side of Milwaukee. That you take a kid from Wisconsin, you throw him in Asia, not really sure how long that's going to last. It's a really big culture change. And we had a lot of fun, and it was open-ended as far as time. So whether it was 2 years or 5 years or 10 years, and the timing just worked out right, where there was an opportunity back here in the States to basically migrate back to the U.S. At the time, work with some other bigger accounts that AudioQuest has. And so it was really just timing. The timing worked out to move back.
What are some of the cultural differences in Asia that you found, maybe the most interesting or desirable? I mean, you had the luxury of calling on so many different countries, right? I mean,
It's and it's so vastly different. You know, you go from countries like Japan that, you know, every single meeting is a formal occasion, you know, and it's you know, kind of like how Italy, as far as a dress, you know, everybody is dressed exceptionally nice and it's a suit and it's very formal, you know, and then Singapore, it's very laid back. um, so, you know, culturally, you know, things like public transportation I've talked about, it's interesting that public transportation we miss. You know, we moved back to LA and Orange County. We're like, oh, we have to drive on the 405 and the 5 again. You know, let's go back to going to a train or a bus that's 50 cents and just easy to get around. Um, so, you know, so I think that that part is a miss. I think the ease of where we lived in Taipei, and for those that don't know, you know, Taipei itself, 8 million plus people, but very condensed. You know, so we'd walk downstairs, walk, and we'd have 10 or 15 little local restaurants that we'd go to that were inexpensive, really good, but walking distance. You know, for any of those listening in New York City, you know, kind of that type of experience. Orange County or a lot of the U.S., you know, it's more spread out. You drive to where you want to go, but having that condensed, you know, walking distance for restaurants, you know, in cities like Hong Kong and Taiwan and Tokyo, you know, it's pretty cool because there's so many options within, you know, a 5-minute walk sometimes.
Now, how is integration different, or is it different in those countries?
It's very different. You know, you take a country like Japan where very small, you know, domiciles, if you were, where everybody lives, you know, everything. So there's not, you know, average TV size is maybe 47 inches. You know, we're here, it's 86. And how big can we go with screens and such? You know, so in-wall speaker business, for example, for a category, you know, that's not that popular because they can't really put it into that big of business. You know, construction in Taiwan, we were trying to figure out how to get some cool audio in our place. We lived in Taiwan, and it is all brick and mortar cinder block construction, which you're not running wires with that. It's exterior, or they're literally chiseling out a channel in the cinder block to try to lay in a conduit to run wires. So building construction is different. Yeah, I think the one thing that's not different is as I traveled through each country, it was really open. It was really eye-opening of as different as cultural things were and construction and things, you know, people are really the same, you know. And when I say that, I mean you know, I remember being in India, for example, with our distributor, and we had this really awesome custom dealers. And custom, as we know it, the CEDIA type integration, it's huge in India. I remember being there, and we're talking about selling performance and how you convey value to customers. And the one, I remember hearing an objection from a sales guy, and he was like, no, but in India, people won't spend the money. And I rewound to when I moved to Alaska with Best Buy, and I moved to Alaska at the time. This is back in like 04. I moved up there and the store was underperforming. And the exact words came out of the salespeople there. They were like, you know, people in Alaska won't buy this. You know, it doesn't matter what it is, but they're like, but they won't buy this. And it was funny talking to this guy in India 10 years later and reliving my story from Alaska, where it's not about the customers, but it's about the perception. And it's how about we build value in what they're buying. And yes, there's different cultural objections and things like that to work through, but ultimately people are people. And if they don't see value in a product or service or good, they're not going to buy it. And a lot of times that's you that you're selling, but that commonality, talk about an even playing field of, yes, you know, India, very different country and very humbling to see, I'll say the gaps and things like financial gaps between
The wealth disparity in society.
Humbling in the nth degree, but yeah, the level playing field of just really how much more similar everybody is and the markets are, outside of the cultural differences, that was eye opening.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Are you happy to be back in the States? How are you and the family? You know, you've been here back for 4 years.
Yeah.
Are you feeling settled in?
Yeah, we're feeling settled in, and we've been trying to go back every year and a half. Like my wife took our 2 boys back to Taiwan last year for about a month. Her family is back there, so her mom and dad, cousins, and so it was nice that they were able to go back for a month, work on Chinese, work on their cultural, just embracing the culture there. So, and then we went back probably about a year and a half earlier for 2 weeks. Actually, sorry, it was almost a month. Actually, we went back. So, So we're here, but we also are trying to make sure the boys are pretty global. And
Language. Are you bilingual or tri? I mean, do you speak more than English?
well, English I would say is still under in progress, if you will.
Right.
No, so yeah, I studied Chinese for, and it's always funny how life takes us on paths. Like working for Best Buy, I was taking Chinese night classes just because, and this is back, I don't know, 09, 10, and I was like, you know what? It seemed like something fun to do. There may be this certain business trend that's gearing towards China. And so I was like, I'll take night classes. And I took night classes for 2 years. And then fast forward a couple years later, taking the opportunity to move to Taiwan and work in Taiwan and Hong Kong and stuff. So I don't know if I would say bilingual, and it's like anything, I've got to practice it. So Chinese is okay. My listening is better. If I spend a week in Taiwan, it gets much better because I get re-immersed back into it. Spanish, I would say so. It's kind of English, Chinese, and then Spanish.
All right, so I'm gonna ask you to say something about Automation Unplugged or One Firefly in Chinese.
Oh,
Can I put you on the spot? Does anything come top of mind that our Chinese speaking listeners would know what you're saying?
yeah. Put me on the spot. Well, 我很高兴Ron Callis Ron Callis 是我的好朋友Automation Plug 是非常好非常好Automation Unplugged 的客户一样的 AudioQuest 客户and 我们的客户那个and by the way, it's a filler phrase, but 那个I'd say I'm trying to think of other things to say. So basically,我很高兴Ron Callis 跟我的好朋友. So I'm really happy that Ron is one of my good friends. And I'd say One Firefly 的是非常好. Is One Firefly is awesome. So there you go.
That's amazing. All right, so when we start dubbing the show into Chinese, that's going to be some version of that's going to be in my intro or outro. So just so you know.
Chinese is interesting because it's so how we speak of, Ron, you're my good friend. The Chinese, the way that the Chinese words go, look at Josh dropping in Chinese. The way that the Chinese language goes, it goes reverse. So a lot of times it's instead of I'm going to the store, it's the store I'm going to. So on the fly, trying to translate in your head, it takes a minute or two.
No, that's all. And just so we're clear, you are seeing comments on your side.
I'm seeing so Josh Willits. I'm seeing him drop in some Chinese characters, and I do not read characters. So thanks, John.
You know what? I just clicked over. This is clear, as in most cases when customers call you guys, you integrators, and you say, this isn't working and it's user error. This was user error. So I'm glad you told me you were seeing that because I had to click something in my software and now I see everyone's comments. So that's fantastic. Thank you guys there you go. I'll put on screen whatever Josh is saying. I hope it's polite, Josh. Cause if not, the world is seeing it here.
Yeah, Josh, I'll say back to you, Jayo, just Jayo in business, and Jayo, it's funny. It literally translates to add oil. Like you can go Jayo to your car, but they use it in especially sports or like baseball. Baseball is really huge in Taiwan and Japan, but in Taiwan, first of all, if you've never experienced a baseball game in Asia, it is it's insane. So go to a baseball game here. Speaking about sports and baseball coming up this week, it's very everybody's sitting down. Maybe there's some chance to get toward the end of the game. The World Baseball Classic was in Taiwan when I was living there, and we went to go see Taiwan versus South Korea. The entire game, all 9 innings, everybody stands, and every single batter that's at bat, everybody is chanting. They're beating drumsticks together, and the Jayo slogan is literally "add oil," but it basically means go 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 or however you want to translate that. But baseball experience, side note, in Asia is crazy because it's packed, pre-COVID type experience. but the energy is like, I'd say, college football type energy in a stadium, where it is
Wow.
just it's different, but it's also baseball, so it makes the experience a little bit different too. So
That sounds amazing. I'm always fascinated by folks, by the way, that can speak multiple language. My wife's from Brazil, and so she speaks English, Portuguese, and Spanish all fluently. Read, write, and can speak it. And I'm just so fascinated how someone can do that. So, and I don't know. I think Asian languages strike me as harder because they're not Latin based, and
yeah,
so it's really a totally different way of thinking and speaking. So, good job,
yeah.
congratulations.
How's your Portuguese, Ron?
I got like a whole inventory of dirty words, but that's about it. So,
Yeah, I've traveled to Brazil a couple times to visit our distributor. They're in the south of Brazil, so Joinville, so very very south. And it was interesting.
that's way down there.
Yeah, it's way. I think before the show we were talking that it's a flight from Houston to Sao Paulo to Curitiba, and then Curitiba was a 2-hour drive down to Joinville. But it was interesting going down there. I mean, awesome group of folks down there. But listening, my one Portuguese is obrigado, which is thank you. But but how much you can actually, if you understand a little bit of Spanish, that you can really start to piece it together really well. But yeah, I think all my Portuguese is clean. So
I understand when my wife speaks, say, to her mother or to family or friends, and she speaks Portuguese. I understand probably more than I let on, but I couldn't put those words together to make sentences. So I know enough vocabulary. I don't know. My vocabulary is probably some hundreds of words, maybe a few hundred words. So
yeah,
I can generally get concepts of sentences, but it's not very helpful. If you dropped me in Brazil and asked me to get around, there'd be a lot of sign language and miming
sounds like
versus words.
right.
So I want to jump to just a different topic here, and that is I'm just curious, and maybe for my audience, because I didn't know this, and you had mentioned this to me in recent conversations. Just the amount of custom work that Magnolia stores do. These Magnolia stores, maybe for those that aren't familiar, educate. What is a Magnolia store? How many of them are there, and what's the typical type of business or the volume that these locations are doing?
Yeah, and so Best Buy, rewind back to 2002, they had bought Magnolia based out of Seattle, and they had this aspiration to build a nationwide um, integration company, essentially. Take the Magnolia model that was doing really well at the time and scale it. And I will say that being part of the experience from the inside, and then obviously being on the outside, everybody has learnings as they try to build out and scale things. But essentially what it is today, the Magnolia Design Centers, they have approximately 90 locations across the United States. And they operate, I would say, very identical to a lot of our integrators. They house, 8 to 15 sales staff that are, they're commission. They're not necessarily working retail, so to speak. A lot of them, as a matter of fact, a good percentage of them rely on referral business, just like a lot of our integrators. And then they work with projects anywhere from the quick kind of hang and bang type small projects, TV mounting projects from $5,000 all the way up to $250,000, $500,000. There's been a few 7-figure projects they've endeavored upon, and those are and kind of everything in between. So it's and obviously having the, I'll say, engineering and design elements on the back end of that to help out with those sort of projects. So yeah, it's they're endeavoring down projects the same size of a lot of our integrators.
What's a typical revenue, top line revenue, if that is public information that
I'd
these
have
stores
to,
are?
I'd have to double check that, but I would say on the high end, it's probably as big as some of the integration companies that are out there. But I have to double check if that's public information, if I'm honest.
Yeah. No, I don't want anyone getting in trouble here. But there are 90 medium to large integrators around the country, and most, even in my mindset, and I know a lot of people I talk to, they wouldn't maybe generally or historically count those Magnolia stores in that integration story. Maybe that's just my ignorance, but I appreciate you educating me.
Yeah, happy to.
So, all right, Star Wars. I appreciate the Mando helmet behind you. But talk to us. What is your affiliation with Star Wars? This is the first interview I've done that I've got various stormtrooper helmets and paraphernalia in the background. So tell our audience kind of what your connection with the Star Wars universe is.
Sure. I'm going to publicly call out my friend Klaus from Steinway and Lindorf. That is not, he may or may not be listening. He's in Denmark at the moment. But to this day, I'll explain my background, but I consider a pretty close friend. His son's name is Luke. So I'll let you connect those dots.
By the way, I've got to put this on screen. Frederick says, "This is the way."
As he has a son named Ben, by the way. So I'm just going to also throw Fred under the bus there.
Right.
Klaus is funny because Klaus has done a lot of work with Steinway and Dolby. And for like the last 5 years, he's been teasing like, hey, we're going to go to Skywalker. We're going to go to Skywalker. And he's a member of Skywalker Vineyard. He's been up there numerous times. And one of these days, we're actually going to make it up there. Hopefully after COVID, and we can travel a bit. But that's like the I guess the Mecca, if you will, to travel to. But my going backwards for a second. So my affiliation was, I guess, like a lot of people. I'm 41 years old. One of the first movies I think I saw in the theater was Return of the Jedi, and you just grew up with, I'll say, the fandom, and I think the things you see behind me, and I will say there's 3 full costumes also that you don't see here today. It actually started once I moved to Taiwan. So I always had friends that were involved in what's called the Star Wars costuming community, and there's a club called the 501st. And the 501st Legion, I mean, it's global. There's 12,000 plus members. I think 2019, they raised over $1 million for different charities, whether it's Alzheimer's or, and I'm escaping of other ones. There's multiple different charities they work with to raise money through basic costuming. It's all volunteer. So what happened was I had friends that were involved, and I said, I'm never going to get costumes or helmets to convert in. I said, that's too nerdy. And then fast forward to me living in Taiwan, I was like, man, I'd like to meet some more people and have some more friends that, outside of just work stuff. And the local group there was like 30 people, and they get together and they dress up as stormtroopers and other Star Wars characters, and they do charity events in Taiwan. And finally I was talking to my wife. I'm like, I think I'm going to cross the threshold. I think I'm going to get a full stormtrooper costume and do this. And that was back actually 6 years ago. And it was a blast. Actually, the first time I dressed up was actually Disney put on a big promotion in Disney Hong Kong where they flew in 100 of us from 13 different countries. We had to pay for our airfare, but they put us up in a hotel for a night. And it was a parade they did for everybody in Hong Kong that day. And it was the first time meeting all these people. I was super nervous. It was the first time like dressing up as a stormtrooper, and I see all these other people and intimidated. But I think the one cool thing is it was kind of like our industry when we do get together face to face and break bread, is even though it's 13 countries and people I'd never met before, within 5 minutes, it was instant family. So that kind of got me hooked of, hey, I can be doing really nerdy charity work where I can dress up and do Make-A-Wish is another foundation they work with a lot, but also be able to have fun with it. There was a girl there was a girl who was being bullied, and bullying campaigns or anti-bullying campaigns are really big in the group. And I remember this story that she was like, I'd say 14 years old, about to go to homecoming, was getting super bullied. That story I won't go into detail here, but basically she loved Princess Leia. So she dressed up as Princess Leia for homecoming. The local people dressed up as Stormtrooper to escort her to the homecoming, and it was a hit. And actually got news publicized around the world. And there was a campaign that she kind of had regressed, got super depressed and was getting bullied again. So I was having a business trip down after this Hong Kong event. And our local group in Taiwan, actually, we had a customized shirt made for her that with her name on it, and a local kind of Star Wars patch and this other stuff and gifts. So when I flew down there, I took an hour out of the way with one of my local friends down in Australia to go surprise her with all these gifts. And that kind of embodied what the group was about. It's about, we joked, dressing up as plastic spacemen. But it's really about bringing smiles to people's faces and through charity events. But it was also through the, seeing her face to surprise it. Here's somebody had flown from Taiwan to bring these gifts for her just to say, you're awesome. Keep things up and don't let other people get you down. And ended up hanging out in the little city. It's about 2 hours north of the city for a bit. It was a blast. And again, most of those people, besides Facebook or social media, I never talked to in person, but within 5 minutes, instant family. So that I guess affection for Star Wars has kind of grown a little bit. So I brought the Mandalorian helmet just for you today. So
I appreciate that. Out of curiosity, do you have a favorite Star Wars film?
My favorite, and anybody that knows me that's listening has probably gotten this, is my favorite is actually the animated series.
The Clone Wars.
So Clone Wars.
They're so good. My son and I consumed the whole thing over the last 6 months. It's an amazing TV show.
Yeah, it's so Dave Filoni, who's the kind of the brainchild behind that. Who, by the way, he also wrote the Avatar: Last Airbender series, so he came from that. But he was really the last person to be an understudy to George, and really just absorbed everything. So the Clone Wars, forget Star Wars, forget it's animated. The storytelling was so good and so in depth. Yeah,
so rich, so textured. The characters are so well developed.
Yeah.
I mean, you understand all the main characters and all their idiosyncrasies. It's really, I love content when it's well written.
Yeah.
And character development is really built out versus replacing that with action or noise.
Yep.
And so, yeah, that's why, even though I don't know if it was a children's series or not, my son did find it and start consuming it, but I wouldn't let him watch an episode without me.
Yeah, I think my boys, well, especially my 6-year-old, he's been going through a lot of them. But as we watch them, you also realize that the amount of levels of things they touch on, societal levels, wealth disparity, lots of things. They deal with the things on a lot of different levels. So that's where the storytelling was so good. And it's interesting about, as we were consuming different types of media during this whole COVID-19 crisis or pandemic, that, Mandalorian, which has been obviously a huge hit, season 2 comes out this fall. Dave Filoni, there's a reason that Dave Filoni, this was his crossover to live action, but where everybody is, a lot of the reviews have been like, this is good storytelling. But you and I were talking, I think about a week ago or so, about the technology behind it, but it feels awesome, but the storytelling is really good. Dave Filoni's and Jon Favreau together are kind of the brainchilds behind that. So
for those that are listening or watching and they don't understand the difference in the technology when they filmed Mandalorian, can you maybe put it into your words? What happened on Mandalorian that made it so different and unique in terms of TV production?
Yeah, picture this. So they shoot movies nowadays, and shoot a movie, and you want to get a scene that's snow, and either you have this really big set you build, or you go someplace live, right? So you go to like Empire Strikes Back. They were literally in, I believe, Norway, if I remember right, and they shot it on site in the middle of a blizzard, and that's how they captured the Hoth snow scene. And but with Mandalorian, and you can catch this on Disney Plus, they show that most of what you're seeing, while it's actual props and the set is there, all you're seeing, the background, the sky, that is all digital screens that are in real time changing. The light is changing to reflect shadows and reflections, all real time. So it's a digital set with full digital screens that they were able to shoot on, basically not have to go on site for anything. So they have the set and then the adoption of kind of a 180-degree bubble, if you will, that they're inside. And it's, I sound like I'm explaining it really well, but to see it and see the YouTube videos or what they put on Disney Plus, it is a super cool way. It's a game changer in how they can make productions without having to really go anywhere, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, the Jon Favreau is the executive producer or the creator of the show.
Yeah,
and he's been doing I think he was doing all the Marvel stuff, the Iron Man stuff, and most recently, and then he did the Lion King. And then before that, he did the Jungle Book, and Jon Favreau was really pushing the boundaries with new technologies that would enhance the lifelike action on screen, but meanwhile trying to leverage technology. And then, my son and we play a lot of Fortnite, and I play on my phone. My son plays on his PlayStation, and it's
Right.
kind of our thing. And he and I have been totally geeking out about the parent, the company called Epic is really one of the innovators as it relates to the latest technology and game engine design. And
Right.
it was actually a game engine that
Hmm.
they used on Mandalorian. So all the screens are basically you're immersed in a game virtual environment that's being projected onto the ceiling and the walls and true parallax. So as the camera's changing position, it's as if the virtual environment, it's not as if the virtual environment on all the walls and ceiling are changing. So all the light reflections on Mando's helmet are real. They're not CG. They're not post production.
Right.
And that it was such, just the tech, as if the show and the scripting wasn't already amazing. The technology, it's pretty darn cool. Hard to not geek out.
Yeah, and actually, a last interesting point. I was watching something actually yesterday, the day before. So Clone Wars finished up, and there's this massive, I'll say, duel that goes between one of the characters, Ahsoka, and Darth Maul. And typically, animation they animate, but this one they actually mocapped or motion captured it with Ray Park, who Ray obviously was the original Darth Maul, and I'd have to look up her name, but she's another martial artist, a stunt woman, that she was the other mocap kind of counterpart to Ray. And what was interesting, I didn't realize this. So first of all, you watch it, and you're like, this is an animation. Like this looks like it's too fluid. It feels too real to how they're interacting and fighting. But what was interesting when they shot it is there was a rig that they were able to watch real time with motion capture. But what Filoni saw is he saw the animation. So while they were fighting, going through the motion capture, he was seeing obviously raw, but he was seeing the raw animation of how this would look before it goes to post. So he was able to really coach it on the animation side live as he was mocapping it. And that's another one where animation, I think, is taking a whole different level, that they can mocap animation where it's much more realistic like that, or just much more, you get much more emotionally involved when it doesn't feel like it's just drawn. Again, there's a lot of groundbreaking technologies of how we're consuming entertainment that are we're at the forefront of it right now.
I'm a big fan of fantasy and sci-fi in my TV shows and movies, and this new era really of incorporating technology into movie making, and it's exciting. If you think about what the future is going to hold and all the talented, creative people, in Hollywood and around the world that are now going to be able to do so much more of immersing us in these virtual spaces. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Now, question for you. Of course, I have to ask, as a stormtrooper, you are, I think, what we would call a professional stormtrooper. Have you or your buddies been in any of the movies, or is that how it works, or how does it work in movies and TV shows?
Yeah, so I regretfully will say no, I have not. But so there's always there's casting events that happen where I think Force Awakens came out. There was a Honda commercial with stormtroopers in it, and they'll do what they call high profile casting through Lucasfilms, and they put it out to the group, and then people can submit for them. And I guess Mandalorian about a year ago, I remember it was December about a year ago, so a year and a half ago, it came out. There was a casting call in LA. And first of all, it said, hey, you need to be available for a whole week. And I was like, well, I can't take a whole week off of work on as much fun as that would be. I said, I can't do that. But fast forward to, there's an annual event called Star Wars Celebration. 10,000 people show up in a city just for Star Wars. And I'm sitting there with a buddy of mine, whose name is Jocko. And we're sitting there talking and we're having a good time one night. And the next day they roll out the trailer for Mandalorian, and they roll out, hey, we used, I think it was something like 20 plus 501st members as stormtroopers in the show. So if anybody's watched it, at the end when you see a bunch of the stormtroopers, a lot of that they brought in and basically, passionate members from the 501st, but they had no idea. And I mentioned my friend Jocko because the next day, as they announce this, and they show the picture that it was Filoni and the entire cast for Mandalorian with all the 501st, and they show the picture, and here I see my friend Rick, my friend Jocko, and I'm escaping of other names, but probably about 5 or 6 other people I know personally, and I had some expletive words I said that turned into him, and I'm like, dude, how long have you been sitting on this? And he's like, we were under NDA. He's like, we couldn't say anything for 6 months. I still can't say anything except I was on the show. And at one point you're like, man, I'm super jealous, but you're super excited too, because now it's come out and it's part of the behind the scenes that they've shown. But super cool that Filoni was like, man, we need a lot of stormtroopers. I know some guys. And he put out the call, and here 30, 40 people show up, and they're extras. And actually, I guess Disney actually recently added them to IMDb. So everybody that was on the show now has an affiliation or a credit for being on the show through IMDb, which was kind of a cool move by Disney to be able to do that for them. So yeah, I personally, you can share. I personally know people that have been stormtroopers since I watched from afar.
This is the second Star Wars affiliation I've had on the show. A couple of I got to think of how many shows ago I had Alex on from Audio Control. And Alex, I want to say he was in the First Hope, the original Star Wars. He was a child alien in the bar scene. Did you know that?
I talked to Alex, on a pretty regular basis, and we've never. You got
to talk Star Wars with him, man. The news broke here on Automation Unplugged that he had been in the original Star Wars.
Oh, that's. No, news to me. So obviously, Alex, I owe you a call to talk about that.
That's funny, and we got a few comments here. Let me put Allison. She goes, "Awesome! You need to watch Star Wars." All right, Allison, you're scaring me.
Oh.
I'm a few decades behind. Oh my gosh!
Allison, you have time.
You have time, but you need to get on it. Star Wars is clearly critically important. So that was fun to go down that path. And just by the way, the different stormtrooper helmets behind you, I went to the wide shot here so that everyone can see those. Can you quickly go through what the differences are in the helmet types?
So here's the interesting one. There's actually 25 behind me, but there's three glass cabinets here that you can't see.
Oh, I do. I see it there. Yes.
So the only one I'll show you one because you were mentioning Clone Wars. It's kind of cool. So if you watch Clone Wars and Captain Rex.
Oh yeah. He's yes.
Yeah. So a friend of mine who's really good at custom art. Like all of this is hand painted, hand drawn.
This is Rex's hat, right?
Yeah. This is Rex's helmet. So even to like the details of.
Wow.
Art and all that stuff, but all the rest are regular stormtroopers. There was something funny that people do mashups. So this was a project recently to do a tactical stormtrooper that looks like he's a SEAL Team 6 but stormtrooper. So it's fake NVGs on there, and
that is so cool. Is there like an online store for stormtrooper helmets where you acquire these, or are these all custom made?
All custom made. So there's So a lot of this is, so imagine making models as a kid. You break apart models and you're gluing things together. Yeah. Basically, stormtrooper armor, and anybody that you see that's ever dressed up at a baseball game or hockey game or events, it's first of all they build it on their own, so it comes as like a kit, but it's all loose. So it's Velcro and glue and snaps and duct tape. Well, sometimes duct tape that are all kind of put to piece it together. So yeah, there's not a store, but there's plenty of the community. You picture this. You go to Cedia, for example, and there's a forum for everything on Cedia. Star Wars, there's a forum for every single costume that's out there of tips and tricks and people helping each other out that are doing it for the first time. So,
all right. So what do you know about Mandalorian? When is the new season? Were they able to film it before COVID? And is it in post-production, or was that being held up?
So my understanding, so I know nothing more than any of us with really good Google skills know. My understanding is they finished it and it's still slated for October release. And that was one of the shows that they were able to wrap up all shooting before everything shut down for COVID. So So we have more things to consume here come fall, which is good.
Oh, this is so good. This is exciting news. Can't wait to tell my son that that event is coming. All right. Believe it or not, we've been going for quite a bit here, and I still have like 80% of my topics I still want to talk to you, still want to ask you about. So I'm going to have to prioritize here. So first of all, I'm going to put on the screen here your website just so that everyone can see, who you work for, who you represent.
Sure.
What is, and I normally would have done this at the beginning, but I forgot. What is AudioQuest? What is the company that you represent? What do they do, and what do they represent for the industry?
Yeah, and it's interesting. I'll mention both companies because we did have an acquisition that happened back in January. So you have two companies really. So you have AudioQuest, which a lot of you are familiar with, and AudioQuest has been around now 40 years. Founded by Bill Lowe, and we've always been a high performance cable manufacturer. But as a lot of anybody that's ever dealt with AudioQuest, we have a pretty big catalog. So we've always wanted to fulfill really any need from every price range. So for cables, do we have cables that are a $40 retail for HDMI? Absolutely. Do we also play on the high end, and I will say have some of the most badass speaker and power cables out there? Our highest end speaker cable is $40,000 retail. So we play on all ends of the spectrum, which also means we play in every single channel, whether it's retail, custom integrator, and then I'll say high-end performance, custom type high-end performance shops that deal with companies like Magico and such.
You were telling me that Metallica, is it Metallica, the band that has AudioQuest cables in their studio? Is that their home studio or their studio?
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look at which studio they used it with, but the pro side, you and I were talking about, we have a lot of people that are on the pro side that they become AudioQuest fans through their home systems.
And you were educating me, so I'm actually going to put on the screen. Let me pull that off here, and I'm going to put on the screen this way. This is my fancy AudioQuest XLR Yukon cable.
Yep.
And I actually called you because I was like, I know this is supposed to be pretty cool, but can you educate me? Like, what is the coolness factor? And you were telling me about copper and air tubes and all this sort of cool stuff that, of course, everyone listening knows what all this is. So I'm like the novice newbie here.
Well, I see Joey Peacock's on, and Joey could probably educate all of us really well. So.
Oh yeah, there he is. Let me put that on the screen. Joey Peacock, right there. And then Dave, is he with AudioQuest?
So Dave Ellington's our director of sales for AudioQuest. He lives down in Houston, so he is one of Joey's friends, mentors, and an all around awesome dude.
He heard us. He says, "Hey, Joey."
Yeah, we use an analogy a lot of times with AudioQuest that it's like mac and cheese, and all of us understand mac and cheese, and all of us have had the 99-cent mac and cheese that it does its job, it gets us through college or whatever our time is that we're going through, and then we've had the mac and cheese with custom-made French cheeses and maybe dropping a little crab, and the noodles are handmade. So, and the reason we use that analogy is just all about the ingredients you use, and you could have commodity cable manufacturers that use, they choose their ingredients for price. It works. It does the job. For us, we can choose different ingredients that cost more money, but the ultimate goal for us is lowering noise and distortion and therefore getting, the most out of your systems. If it has less noise and distortion, therefore you're going to get more out of your systems. And that's every single thing. You mentioned air tubes and different types of metal and different types of insulation. All those are our ingredients that we can be able to work within to be able to have different performance levels of cable that are out there.
So what, if anything, during this, and I know that you did mention you also had a recent acquisition, if you can share with the audience what that was?
Yeah, so the Quest Group, which is the parent company of AudioQuest, still owned by Bill Lowe, so everything is still a single owner. We fully acquired Golden Ear Technology back on January 1st. So a lot of people know Sandy Gross and the companies he built with Definitive Technology as well as Polk Audio. And Sandy and Bill had been talking for a while, and we essentially consummated the acquisition January 1st. So now we have both brands, separate sales team that manages a golden ear. A lot of people here might know David Penrod. David's the director of sales for Golden Ear for North America. So that acquisition has been like a lot of acquisitions. It's always fun to kind of go through that and learn the dealers and the intricacies. But yeah, that's been a fun kind of addition, as a brand and speakers that we have to complement AudioQuest out there. So
inside of the AudioQuest lineup, have you noticed any changes in habits or patterns from either your integrator customers or the consumers out there? Are you sold exclusively through retailers and integrators, or is there a direct sale component to your stuff?
So we don't sell direct to consumer. We have I'll back up for a second. So we don't go through distribution. So we're direct for all retailers, all integrators. There is a handful of our products that are on, say, Control4's portal, the Savant store. So we put a handful of those on to make it available for their dealer bases. But aside from that, it is all direct. I think the trends have been interesting. One trend, I will say, every single dealer we talk to right now, every integrator we talk to is busy. So that part has been, outside of, I've had a conversation where everybody's kind of gone through the cyclical wave of April was kind of the holy cow moment. May was like, okay, PPP's done, we got our funding, and then it's like, let's get back to doing business. And we were, I think, lucky on a supply chain side that supply chain's pretty good, inventory's pretty good on the cabling side of things. Actually, both brands' inventories are pretty good. But once business started ramping up, dealers are like, hey, we're booked 6 weeks out, we're booked 8 weeks out. I'm one on a business trend, by the way, that I still question sustainability a little bit. But while we got it, and while we have it, and while consumers are staying at home, and all the content we were just talking about with Star Wars and Mandalorian, and people are enjoying it at home and investing in their systems, that the business trend has been really encouraging. On a consumer trend, I think it's, one topic, we were discussing pre-show is, behaviors that e-commerce and I think the rapid changing environment of how consumers are engaging, that we've seen a big change. And even how we are engaging to our dealers, that part has changed. So on a product side of things, we're a little lucky on the cable side, at least, that we, where the panel manufacturers go, where AVRs go, where the other manufacturers go with their technology, we're kind of the tail to a bigger dog, where we'll follow them. So that we haven't seen a big change in, but behaviors and where people are shopping and how they're engaging for us to dealers or dealers to their customers, I think there's been a huge shift there and a huge change there.
Are dealers and dealers or slash integrators, retailers, are they allowed to sell your stuff, your cables and devices from their websites? I mean, is that allowed in the ecosystem?
Yep. Yeah. So absolutely. And we rely on them for that. So we have a handful of dealers that sell through, marketplaces like Amazon. Best Buy, of course, sells our product on their website. And then we have a handful of partners like Crutchfield, Worldwide Stereo, High Def Lifestyle, that, Bjorn's app, that will sell our products on their sites. But the product's a UPP product. So the nice part is, no matter where you're going, you're seeing a Cinnamon HDMI cable for the same price, no matter where you're going. And in today's, e-commerce driven world, that's pretty strong, because last thing you want is price disparity or losing your pricing on the e-commerce platforms.
Got it. Makes sense. A couple more quick topics here before I let you jump, if you allow. And that is CEDIA. There's as we all know, this is not news. CEDIA is not going to happen in person this year. It is going to happen virtually. I know I just had the One Firefly presentation from the CEDIA crew just last week, maybe a week or two ago. I'm just curious what your read on that is, maybe what sort of buzz that is happening inside of your organization and with folks that you've talked to. Are they going to participate? If so, do you think dealers are going to participate? I mean, I think we're all kind of trying to figure this out.
I think it's a great question, and we're definitely looking at all the options, but if I look at how we've adapted through this pandemic, and we're a very personal company. A lot of our dealers and salespeople work with us. We're always in the field. We're always very hands on. So to not do that was kind of like, man, how do we adapt? And we've adapted to a lot of webinars and a lot of engagement through Zoom or video conferencing and such through this. So when you look at the CEDIA virtual, it's a tough call. And we'll make a final decision because I think the deadline is this week for it. And the tough call is, do you invest money? Which, let's face it, that yes, business is very good, but a couple months it was really tough. So do you invest money in that, or do we continue to invest in education and web platforms with our dealer base or other dealer bases? So through partners like, say, One Firefly or Savant or Control 4 or other ones, do we invest in connecting with them there versus, say, a CEDIA virtual? And I think that's where it's, if I had to lean towards a decision, it's investing into our existing dealer base, a little bit more personable. It's a little bit more not wait and see. We kind of control the content, the message, and where it's going out. But I think everybody's also trying to figure out, how do you adapt during this time? And CEDIA is trying to do the same thing. And while is it the right thing? I don't know. But they have to also be able to figure out what does work, that they can continue to educate the integrators and the dealers out there, and educate both on the CEDIA side as well as giving manufacturers a vehicle or avenue to try to also engage to the community. So
I know for many years I've run into you at so many events, so many industry events, buying group events or CEDIA events or whatnot. And there are, at least to my knowledge, no events happening. I guess maybe the CEDIA Tech Summits are a maybe. I think that's still accurate. I don't know if a verdict's been made there, but there's going to be no events this year, or not many.
Yeah.
How do you think this changes our industry as we roll out of this 2020 year into the future? What do you think changes?
There's probably two answers. I think everything changes, and I think no things change, and then there's probably some place in the middle. And I go back to behavior changes of 6 months ago, a year ago, having a Zoom education with salespeople at a dealer, or a Zoom co-branded. So it's the dealer working with a project, working with a consumer. They have myself from AudioQuest. They have somebody from Sonance. They have somebody from other manufacturers, Alex from Audio Control. They have a couple of different manufacturers to help with a Zoom call with a project that they're working on. And a year ago, that might have been different. That probably wouldn't have happened. People would have flown in for that. They would have met face to face. But I think through this, that some of those behavior changes are forcing us to think about, how do we engage differently and maybe more smartly. Buying groups, I think, are one. Some of the breaking bread moments, that's never replaced. You and I sitting down and having a lunch and having a conversation. That doesn't replace the in-person feel. But I think it's going to the virtual environment like this, or what Zoom or other ones have provided, is we've been doing it for so long now that it's like, man, if I've seen more dealers, if this makes sense, in the last 3 months or 4 months than maybe I've seen in the last year, because we're able to engage quicker and faster through different platforms. Is it the right answer long term? Probably not. But is there some sort of hybrid mix between that? I think in talking to a lot of companies, I think a lot of us have figured out that we've become much more efficient through the forced change than, say, having salespeople on the road 50 weeks a year. So it's kind of a long answer, and again, we're still in the middle of the pandemic, so we're not quite out of it. But what do buying groups look like? What's the value add for the get together of what's been done for years? And I'll say in some ways have they been done because that's the way it's always been done? Probably. But I think this pandemic is forcing everybody to rethink what's truly valuable and how do we move going forward. So kind of a long answer to a short question, but
no, I agree, man. I think it's hard to know the unknowable, but those all seem like reasonable observations, and I think we'll have to all watch and see what happens. But I know we're all trying to figure it out. I do know that. Shaun, it has been a lot of fun having you on the show, my friend.
No, it's and we probably could go for another hour with different
I think
topics.
easily with all the material I have here, I think we could easily roll for a full Joe Rogan segment of maybe 3 hours. But I'll just save our audience from that. Well, I'm gonna cut it here. How can our audience get in touch with you? What's the best ways to reach you or to follow you?
Yeah, so I will preface that social media on Facebook and LinkedIn I probably use for more personal, non-work related things. I like to use social media as a positive, if that makes sense for everybody out there. So don't be surprised if there are more Star Wars or family things that are probably shared on there. LinkedIn is where I kind of keep things. I'll say more, reviews or other things that are going on in our industry. That's where I tend to engage a lot of our community more on that platform. But I'd say through those social platforms, you can find me. I don't have them up to, a slide to throw up, but
no, that's okay. We'll drop it into the comments on the Facebook page, and of course we'll have all of those social links and points of reference for contact on our show page on our website. So we'll make sure that's easily accessible and you're easily findable.
Yeah, and Ron, I'll echo it. It's been fun chatting with you, and one thing I think I saw early in this pandemic was the only way we get through this, however long it lasts, is through a community and through us really comparing notes together. And it doesn't matter if it's One Firefly or AudioQuest or Joey, calling out Joey down south. It's the more we compare notes, the more we discuss what we're going through, the more we also share the victories and I'll say points of light. That allows us to, I think, mentally understand that it's not if we'll get through it, it's we will get through this, and how successful all of us will be as an industry, which is why when you asked me a month ago, hey, would you ever be on the show? My answer was, heck yeah. It's fun to talk about this. It's fun to talk about things that aren't especially doom and gloom that's out there. It's also fun to talk about things that we have fun with. So, could we go on and on about Mandalorian? Yeah, but it's also that is fun. We don't always have to be in an engaged business conversation, because there are other things. There are much more positive things that are going out there. So, short answer. Thanks for having me on, man. It's good seeing you and good chatting with you for a bit.
Likewise. Awesome. Thank you, Shaun.
Cool.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. That was show 130 with the one and only Shaun Schuetz he's VP of sales. He's from AudioQuest, and I guess now Golden Ear. So I don't know, maybe his title needs to change and need to add Golden Ear there to the title. That sounds like an exciting acquisition. And appreciate everyone watching and listening and continuing to tune in. Remember, if you have not already done so, and we are seeing our subscriptions, that's a hard word to say, go up every month. Go to your favorite platform. I know I consume my podcasts on Apple Podcasts. But whatever your flavor is, don't forget to go in and subscribe to Automation Unplugged, and that way you hear from all of our latest guests. And on that note, thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next week with another fun guest and a fun conversation. Take care, guys.